The fact that with the Wright bacteria, you can have an 18% decrease in your inflammation, which is huge in a time in life when we're highly inflamed.
Fermented foods have the most evidence to be able to decrease inflammation in our body.
Do we need to have a diversity of fermented foods?
This is a great question.
Today, we're talking to one of those brilliant people, Dr. Amy Shah.
1 tablespoon of chia seeds has 5 grams of fiber. 5 grams added to an American diet is enough to lower mortality by 7 to 10%. People don't know that you get to your peak bone density and your peak muscle mass at 30.
You've come up with this 30-33 framework.
30 grams of protein in your first meal, 30 grams of fiber throughout the day, and 3 probiotic foods every single day. These are the fundamental things in our diet that we could be changing today that could make a difference in literally 3 days.
You know, the beautiful thing about my work is that I get to not only be on stages in exotic places with brilliant people, and today we're talking to one of those brilliant people, Dr. Amy Shah. And the cool thing about us, Amy, is that I met you online, and then I met you in person, and we've been around the same gorgeous supper table with some of our other friends. And you and I and our spouses were together in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, which is not something I can say about a lot of people. So I know I'm happy to have you on this show today because I'm really excited about your current book. You've already written one about being so effing tired, which I can totally identify with. But this comes out next week. Well, actually, it comes out the very day we're airing this podcast, Hormone Havoc. So I'm so excited to have you here talking about this.
First of all, thank you for that intro. And in general, it's been such a pleasure getting to know you and your husband and your work, both online and then offline and in the real world. It's really nice to have a friend in this world that kind of has a similar mission. And so thanks for having me.
You know what's interesting? Before we get into this, what you just said just sparked something in me. You know what? Before social media and us doing this as part of our careers, I probably would have never met you because I'm an orthopod and you're a medicine doctor. And how amazing is it that we can actually work together now and we would have never even met before?
That it's so true. And also, sometimes you meet people online and you're like, what are they really like in person? You don't really know. So it's really nice to meet people because we have so many of the same struggles that we talk about, so many of the same questions. So it's been really great. And you've been doing this for so many years.
It's the truth.
I have a lot to learn. I'm only at I think you have many, many, many books.
I do have many books and have been doing it for a long time, but you've really taken the digital airways by storm. I mean, you almost 2 million people on Instagram. So people are loving to learn from you.
I think, we all have struggles. And I feel like the nutrition and exercise, you address the exercise part. I primarily address the nutrition piece. I think these are the things that people don't get enough support for. I mean, Vonda, when I wanted to research this book, I thought to myself, okay, let me just see what's out there first. What medical schools or what people are teaching doctors. So I got the Menopause Society textbook. I got a bunch of the new updated textbooks because I thought maybe I was, missing that in my initial training. None of these textbooks had a chapter on nutrition. What? How do you not tell women in midlife, even 30s and beyond, how they should be eating or living? I mean, that's just criminal. I think it's sad that not only do we not have a resource for patients, but doctors don't have resources to actually know what to say or what the studies say. And so a lot of times when I'm saying things, people are hearing it for the first time, even in medicine, because we just don't get enough training on it. And there's no concentration. There was a whole section on supplements. And there's a whole section on medications. Obviously, a huge area was concentrated on hormone therapy, as it should be. But I think there should be a whole kind of teaching on, hey, what does the science say about the way women are supposed to change the way they eat or live, especially around nutrition around this time of life. I think it's very sad that we don't have that.
Well, and it brings to mind, I'm on a rampage in 2026 to do my part to eliminate prediabetes. But when I talk to my patients in my clinic and I read their labs and their fasting glucose is 110, or I ask them their medications on their metformin, and I ask them if they've ever been told that they're pre-diabetic, and they almost flip it off like, "Oh yeah, they told me I was pre-diabetic." And then I say, "What were you told? How were you told to address nutrition in your lives?" And to a person, they are told, "Oh, just do better. Just make better choices." The reality is, because of what you just said, there is no class in medical school on nutrition to the depth that any of us need it.
No.
That's about all we can tell people unless we do what you and I have done and do a deeper dive, right?
Yeah. And most people, like, they don't even know. As a physician, when I was trained, I actually trained in nutrition in undergrad and then I went to med school. Yet we still, we had so little training on just practical nutrition, and especially for women. And you talk about this all the time. People don't know that you get to your peak bone density and your peak muscle mass at 30. And so if you knew that when you were young, you would do things differently. And then if you knew that from then on, you had to really amp it up, you would do things different. Like, people want to know that so that it can be proactive, not break a bone when they're, in their 60s or 70s and then find out for the first time that that was the problem. Like, it's, I think that's where nutrition for me, that's why this book to me felt something I wanted to do, is because in the social media, you can talk about so many different topics. But I found that when I talked about the nutrition for women and changes in perimenopause and how you can change your life during perimenopause, it actually struck a chord with women, and for a good reason, because they didn't have were getting that knowledge anywhere else. And that's kind of the motivation behind writing this.
Well, so you're such a good teacher. And so I love how again, Hormone Havoc, you have, listen, I find people just want to be told, give me the facts, Jack.
Yes.
I just need to know what to do. And then when I know what to do, then I might dive deeper. And you've come up with this 30-33 framework, which I think is something that people can really grab a hold of. Do you want to explain how you developed this and what it means?
Okay, so 30-33, the way I'll tell you what it stands for, and then I'll tell you why I developed it or how. So 30 grams of protein in your first meal, 30 grams of fiber throughout the day, and 3 probiotic foods. So 3 servings of probiotic foods every single day. And the reason I decided to make it super easy is most of us that are in perimenopause, menopause, or beyond are extremely busy. We have super, uh, sometimes we're taking care of both children and our parents. We're taking care of our home. We have businesses. We're working, all of the things. And so I thought to myself, what is the easiest thing that would be something that I could achieve, that could be a goal for me that actually follows the science? And so then I looked into the science in terms of what actually makes a huge difference in women's hormones, in gut health and brain health and longevity. And it kept coming up: protein, fiber, and fermented foods. Fermented foods just don't get enough play in the American diet. We have almost no fermented, unless you're eating yogurt, which is a great fermented food. Besides sauerkraut and kimchi and raw apple cider vinegar, miso and tempeh, they're just not a part of the typical American diet. And fermented foods have the most evidence to be able to decrease inflammation in our body. So I thought to myself, these are 3 things that we know for sure. There's many, many, many more things that are being researched, many things that are controversial, many things that we're kind of maybe thinking could be true. But these are the fundamental things in our diet that we could be changing today that could make a difference in literally 3 days. And so that's the basis of the 30-33.
Let's go down the road of the 3 fermented foods, because I think for most Americans, that's going to be the hardest to hit or even know what we're talking about. And you just listed off a number of them. But why are fermented foods so good at anti-inflammation? Let's start there.
Okay, so such a cool thing. So we have bacteria in our body that is almost forgotten, but there's about 1 trillion. And so just as many cells as we have in our body, we have these bacteria that live there. Kind of like I think most people in school learned about the Amazon jungle, where there's all these species that are intertwined. I mean, vines on top of trees that are like, helping each other symbiotically. And that's exactly how our body works. Our body it has an Amazon jungle inside of it, and there are bacteria. And taking it back to fermented foods is bacteria. They have bacteria. And so these bacteria that live in our bodies are actually helping our hormones. They're helping our immune system, and they're helping our brain, among other things. But they are dying because our modern American lifestyle and diet are just starving them to death. And so we need to do more things to actually add more bacteria and to feed the bacteria that are in there. They're actually good bacteria. We don't want to be killing all of these. And so eating fermented foods is actually eating more bacteria that can go into that gut and help our body make communication calls. They're like holding a walkie-talkie and talking to our brain, talking to our hormones, talking to our immune system. And so much so that just by adding fermented foods, you can actually re-sync the body into a space where it's like 18% lower inflammation, because it's getting the communication it needs with our immune system. It has more like, army soldiers to be fighting the fight that we need down there. So it is really a huge part of our life that we don't even acknowledge. Every single person has bacteria inside of them. And we know that people who still live in the very old way, kind of the hunter-gatherer way, there's still a few tribes left in the world do that. They have double the gut bacteria that we do in the modern world. And so what we're learning is there's something really great that the bacteria do, including talk to our immune system and talk to our hormones, meaning hormone balance, meaning inflammation lowering, meaning our brain functions better, meaning we live longer. And these things are happening because these gut bacteria are able to signal to the rest of the body the way they're supposed to. They actually make hormones. They make dopamine. They make serotonin. They make these anti-inflammatory compounds called short-chain fatty acids, which is like ibuprofen for our body. And so, and every culture used to eat them, Vonda. Like every single culture in the world, our bodies required fermented foods because there's no other way for us to really preserve foods. And so fermentation was the only way. There's actually evidence that the hunter-gatherer human would even take kind of decaying fruit or like food that was had some bacteria in it, and we would eat that. And why would we eat things that had bacteria in it? Because our bodies actually require that. And that's really sad that a lot of people might be hearing this for the first time. Our bodies are programmed to turn down our insulin, to turn down our digestive enzymes, to turn down our digestive processes in the evening time, late in the evening time. And so if you are eating at those times, if you're eating a huge meal at those times, you are shortchanging yourself. Your metabolism is not working well. It is meant to be repairing and renewing and fasting.
You may think your bones are fine, silent, but if you're a woman over 40, your bones are talking to you. And unbreakable bone is how you answer back. During perimenopause and menopause, your bone loss can triple without us even knowing it. That is why I created my 8-shield Building Better Bone program, including Unbreakable Bone Nutrition Augment. Built on clinically studied collagen, microcrystalline hydroxyapatite, and the essential micronutrients your skeleton needs. It's the only formula designed by an orthopedic surgeon who spent 25 years rebuilding bone, muscle, and movement. Stronger bones are the foundation of a longer, more powerful life. Start building your unbreakable era today at shop.drvondawright.com. I hope they're not hearing it for the first time, but I hope that they're now going to take action on it. But the question that I was thinking as you were talking about it, and the fact that with the right bacteria, you can have an 18% decrease in your inflammation, which is huge in a time in life when we're highly inflamed with our loss of estrogen. So do we need to have a diversity of fermented foods? Like, do we get lactobacillus reuteri and all the other strains only from dairy products, or do we get Bifidobacter, and that is about as many bacteria names as I know, from something else? Or can I only eat yogurt, or I don't even eat kimchi? Do I have to go put some cabbage and ferment it? How do we get this?
Yeah, this is a great question. And I don't know if you remember, but in the media a few months, maybe a year ago, they were talking about the oldest living woman in the world in Spain. She was like 117, I think. And one of the things they noticed about her diet, her microbiome, by the way, was exceptional. And some of that was genetic, but some of that they think was because of her diet and lifestyle. She ate yogurt 3 times a day, every single day, Vonda, for years, since she was a girl. And she says, and obviously you can't ever point at one food saying like, oh, that was the game changer. And so she really only had, she may have had other fermented foods, but that was one of the main fermented foods she had. And so for us, dairy products, if you can tolerate dairy, is an excellent way, an easy way. So there's probiotic cottage cheese, there's yogurt, there's kefir. And for people who are dairy allergic or sensitive, there is coconut water kefir now. There is coconut yogurt with probiotics now. And so there's lots of ways to create kind of that dairy feel without dairy itself, and still get your probiotics pretty easily from the grocery store. But if you want to mix it up, and I think this is a great time to try other things, meaning trying some sauerkraut. You want to get the one that's refrigerated and says it has live probiotics. The nice thing about America is that because it has bacteria in it, it has to be labeled that it has bacteria. And so any food that is probiotic will be labeled with that it has live bacteria. And you want that labeling. And so sauerkraut that's in the refrigerated section, the kimchi, but even if you don't like any of those things, raw apple cider vinegar, if you make a dressing out of it or add it to your water, that is something that's a really, really easy way to get some fermented food into your life. I love all types of fermented foods, but I think that it's really difficult to do if you're not someone who's used to it. So starting with a few dairy products, maybe adding in a sauerkraut, which is probably one of the easier ones, adding in a raw apple cider vinegar, maybe a miso paste. That's a really easy way to start, and add some fermented food that way.
So, something that happens in the US, I don't know about other countries, is that because of our pasteurization laws, a lot of our dairy is pasteurized, which kills the natural bacteria. But to make it probiotic, they're added back in. Do we have to be worried about that? Should we make our own yogurt? I tried that once. It's not as easy as I thought it would be.
I know. And I wanted to, one time we were talking about making our own fermented vegetables. So, but you have to be careful because you have to have a very sterile environment to make it. It's not rocket science. Yes, you 100% eating dairy, yogurt, for example, cottage cheese, or any of those things that are fresh and not from the store, made homemade, will give you the highest amount of probiotics. But one of the interesting things, by the way, you know how everyone's into sourdough bread? Like it's like all the rage. I don't know if you're into it.
I'm into it.
But the thing is that the cool thing is that things like sourdough, although when you cook it, you kind of are killing the live bacteria. Yeah. There's been great studies that show that those bacteria, even though that they're dead, they have a lot of benefit for our gut. Our gut bacteria like to see them. They benefit from them, and they are called postbiotics. And so eating sourdough bread can be a great way. In Indian food, we have like fermented dough and you can bake like dosa or idli. So anyone who's every culture in the world has fermented foods that they incorporate into their diet. And so this is a chance to do that. It's opposite of what we've ever been taught. We've never been told to eat fermented foods because it's just not in the media. And maybe if someone's really into gut health, they've heard of it or they've wanted to do it. But this is like, the more and more I learn about fermented foods, the more I feel like this is an easy lever that we can like pull to actually lower inflammation and improve our gut health, but also our hormone health, because our gut is very much intertwined with hormones. In fact, we have gut bacteria that actually decide how much estrogen gets recirculated into our body and how much is let out through our stool. It's called the estrobolome. And so we need to be eating these kind of foods to support that gut.
So we've talked about fermented foods. You've given us at least 10 examples. 3 times a day is what you're saying. So really basically at every meal, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's
And you
principle.
can do like a tablespoon of sauerkraut is considered one serving.
Oh,
it's not.
Oh,
like,
it's not huge. Just down.
Yeah.
It's like peanut butter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Put it on a
Yeah.
spoon
Yeah.
and eat it.
Just have
Okay.
it. Yeah.
That's not bad. Let's go to the second one and when I talk protein all the time, as everybody does,
Yes.
and it's not so hard to get that. But what is hard for me that I'm constantly thinking about is 30 grams of fiber, because 5 grams is what you get in a cup of beans or a cup of vegetables. So you have to constantly be thinking about how to get your fiber. So if we talk about fermented foods as probiotic with the actual bacteria, fiber is prebiotic, meaning it
It's like the
feeds the
fertilizer.
microbiome. It's
Yeah.
the fertilizer. So let's talk about how to get enough fiber and what your favorites are. It's not easy, but how do we do it?
One really easy way is a serving of raspberries. A cup of raspberries has 8 grams of fiber in 1 cup. Okay. And then we have the other thing I love berries. So blueberries, raspberries, and then a pear has 6 grams. And one big hack I have for everyone here is 1 tablespoon of chia seeds has 5 grams of fiber. And so if you add chia seeds to your water, to your yogurt, to anything that you're having, you already got 5 grams of fiber. And but that 5 grams doesn't sound like a lot, but 5 grams added to an American diet is enough to lower mortality by 7 to 10%.
Wow.
Because that's how important fiber is to our bodies. And we're getting so little. We get between 12 and 15 grams on average in America. And women, we really need to be getting 25 to 30 grams. And so I put a goal of 30 because I want you to thrive. And that's what you need to thrive. All the studies are looking at how 25 to 30 grams of fiber can actually change so much of your body. I mean, fiber literally is the food for that gut bacteria that is controlling your mood, your motivation, your drive. It's controlling your hormones. It's controlling your immune system. And so if you want to feel more energetic, you want to have more longevity, or you're interested in just balancing, getting your hormones in check, that the fiber is there. And like, I love chia seeds, but if you eat chia seeds, you can do the pear, you can do the raspberries. Oh, avocado is an amazing source of
I
fiber
know,
as
avocado.
well. And so these are things I think what happens is when you arm women with this knowledge, women do it. It's not like we just did it like no one knows, right? When I tell women like, oh, you could have 1 tablespoon of chia seeds, or you could do a serving of raspberries, they're like, wait, really? I could totally do that. Like that's doable. And if you do that, you're up to 30 grams in no time.
Another fiber that I like, I just ordered another bag actually, besides chia seeds, is basil seeds.
Yes.
They also
like
have a lot of
seeds.
fiber. Yeah.
Yes. Basil seeds are really popular in Indian culture as well. So basil seeds, any kind of seeds, nuts, and fruit are all really great source of fiber. But I really do love the berries because they're such a big source, as well as the avocado and the pears. These are all things that are kind of easy to obtain and have great source of fiber. Um, I think hemp seeds, um, and people, you can use a supplement like psyllium husk or inulin if you want to supplement your fiber, but it's not that hard to get it through food. And so when you can get it through food, it's great.
I think that when I count mine, it's easy for me to get 15. It's that last 15 that I actually have to
Yes.
focus on. But to your point, I mean, I eat an avocado every day, at
There you
least a
go.
half every day. So that's a
Yeah.
lot of fiber. I just made some white beans yesterday. That's a lot of
Yes,
fiber.
beans are a ton of fiber.
Yeah, adding basil seeds, just with the caution that they do expand in your stomach. So buyer beware, just like chia seeds. And so 3 probiotics, 30 grams of fiber, 30 grams of protein at breakfast. Why do you specify at breakfast?
Okay, so here's the deal. I was struggling with trying to figure out how to communicate the protein message. So we know that your protein goals are very different from someone who's sedentary and, 20, right? Like very different. And it depends on your activity level. It depends on your size. It depends on where in life you are. And so what I found to be true though was that every one of us can benefit from starting with a big load of protein in the morning. So it doesn't have to be like some people say, oh, roll out of bed and have protein. I just say sometime early in the day with your first meal. And the reason why is that we can agree, even if your total protein goes, whether it's 70 grams or 100 grams or 150 grams, you will benefit from getting that 30 grams in the morning. It is great for focus, for motivation, for mood, for hunger and cravings. And it's also giving you the best chance to get to your total protein goals for the day. And so everybody, all the studies that look at protein, especially for women early in the day, show that they have better outcomes. They have better mood. They have better focus. You'll have a better day, cravings wise, mood wise, focus wise, when you have that 30 grams of protein. I don't know about you, Vonda, but I find that to be true for myself.
Oh,
Like I was noticing that the days that I actually prioritize a protein in the morning, and now it's become almost like a non-negotiable for me. Except, sometimes when I'm traveling, it's just so hard. We always are trying to figure out easy ways to get our protein in, but it makes such a huge difference. And especially when women are in that menopausal transition, when we actually are losing a lot of muscle mass, losing a lot of bone mass, we aren't really getting enough sleep. We may have hormonal issues and symptoms. Having that protein early in the morning can really, really help with that hormonal roller coaster that we're going through.
well, and I noticed that in your book, it's not just 30-33 every day, try it for 7 days. You're also interested on timing of food, right? Circadian food timing. Explain to everyone listening your differentiation between circadian fasting and intermittent fasting.
Yeah. So, about probably not our grandparent, maybe our grandparents, definitely our great grandparents, not too long ago, had to live with a sun and dark cycle because you couldn't eat in the middle of the night. There's no Uber Eats that could deliver a huge meal to you, and there was no microwaves, and you kind of naturally stopped eating. After dark, it was like you had your biggest meal. You might have a dinner, and then you might have a snack, maybe small, but you're not eating a huge load of food a few hours before bed. And
Yeah.
our bodies are programmed to turn down our insulin, to turn down our digestive enzymes, to turn down our digestive processes in the evening time, late in the evening time. And so if you are eating at those times, if you're eating a huge meal at those times, you are shortchanging yourself. Your metabolism is not working well. It is meant to be repairing and renewing and fasting. And so my argument about fasting is just do it the way our bodies are programmed to eat. It's not about doing something extreme. It's about actually following what we are supposed to be doing according to our circadian rhythm. There's plenty of evidence that shows that for most people, around 8 o'clock, our body switches. into kind of repair and renewal mode where there's signals like the melatonin that tells you to get sleepy. It also tells your pancreas, okay, we're going to get ready for bed. So you can turn down all of your secretion of insulin and also digestive enzymes, all of the things, so we can get ready for bed. So the body just prepares because we have to be renewing and repairing at some point. And so that's kind of when that happens. And so what I usually say to people is that if you can stop eating 2 to 3 hours before bed, give your body a good 12, 13, 14-hour break and then start eating. That is consistent with what your body is expecting and your metabolism, your insulin levels, your goal to abolish pre-diabetes. This will happen if you can time it that way and eat in accordance to circadian rhythms. Our circadian rhythms run our bodies. I mean, 80% of the processes in our bodies run on circadian rhythms.
So, circadian rhythms, just for people out there, what's that? It's the light dark cycle that our body naturally runs on. But, well, you and I have talked about this before as we're out to dinner together. It's easy to do that in your own house, on your own time zone. But if you're in New York or on the West Coast and everybody wants to go out to dinner starting at 8 o'clock, it becomes hard. So, what happens when we eat too late or at a time when our body is revving up recovery and slowing down the day? Do we just keep everything turned on? And what does that do during the night as we're still digesting?
Well, remember this, I love to tell this story because it's so relatable. So imagine if you were asleep, dead asleep, and you and I have both been on call. You probably, took it for a lot longer than I did. But imagine you get woken up in the middle of the night from a call. And for people who aren't physicians, it might be a call from your child or whatever. And they're asking you a very complicated math problem in the middle of the night. And so you'll wake up and you'll be groggy and you'll try to figure it out. It might take you a lot longer than it would have, in the middle of the day. And eventually you figure it out and you go back to sleep. And the next morning you're like, I kind of feel tired from that phone call last night, and that's exactly what's happening. So when we are eating at times that we're not supposed to, our digestive system, our pancreas, our hormones are like, wait, what? We're ready. They were fast asleep and they were doing all the repair stuff. And now they have to turn. And now, so the blood sugar stays elevated for longer because it's not able to kind of bring the blood sugar in as fast as it could have during the day. You have less insulin. They are ready to capture that blood sugar. Your digestive enzymes were not ready for this. So they're like trying really hard to like get some out there. And you get, a lot of people will get acid reflux, will get indigestion, will get bloating because the digestive system wasn't really able to keep up with this huge meal that you're eating late at night. And then you wake up in the morning and you're like, I don't feel great. I don't feel as rested, right? Because when your body was supposed to be sleeping and repairing and renewing, it got woken up to do all this work. And so now you're feeling kind of jet lagged from that. And so just like our brain needs time to repair and relax and sleep so that it can it's always working at night, right? But it's repairing, consolidating memories, it's cleaning out areas. That's exactly what our hormones and our gut is doing overnight. And so when we're shortchanging that, that's going to cause issues not only with our metabolism, but also how we feel about ourselves, our energy levels, and our.
I think it makes it easy for people to understand then what to eat, when to eat it. But there are still a lot of fakes out there. Like just because a package says high protein, it doesn't mean it's quality. And anytime it's ultra processed, we have to be wary. Can you walk us from a nutrition standpoint down these two roads?
The best way I can describe an ultra processed food is that you couldn't recreate it in a kitchen, even if you had every single ingredient. Ordering like stuff that's in there. Because so ultra processed foods, actually the way it's defined in medical studies, is food that could not be recreated in a culinary kitchen. There are ingredients in there that are not food. And for most of us, it's hard to recognize that because some of these things look, some of these food items have fancy names, and how do you even know? So it is difficult to sometimes tell between what is a, you know, processed food versus what is an ultra processed food. But it's very easy to imagine. I'll just take Twinkies, for example, and pick on them for a minute. And most people who are young can't even remember, but we remember what
I
Twinkies are.
remember.
They're this yellow cake filled with like frosting, and it's a flavor that like is very, very unique. And even if you baked a cake and you put in cream, it would taste nothing like a Twinkie. And the same thing is with Doritos. Like you could make Doritos at home with your flour chips and your seasonings, but it wouldn't taste like Doritos. And so what these food manufacturers do is they're adding things that are not food, non-food ingredients to make it taste better, to have a better shelf life, to make it last longer, to have a flavor profile that's very enticing. And that is what ultra processed food is. And people often think, well, okay, it's Twinkies and it's Doritos. But it's also, your favorite fast food drive through. It is also your frozen meal that you have, when you're in a rush. It's also in your protein bar that you're eating. So it is very, unfortunately, Vonda, the last thing I read was about 65% of our grocery store is ultra processed now. So it's almost like out of every other thing that we are picking up at the grocery store is ultra processed. And students, like teens that we both have, they're eating 70% ultra processed foods.
Well, and so I think buyer beware when a food is a fluorescent color that nature doesn't make, right? How did it get that way? Or it has a very long shelf life because it's in a box. I mean, how does that happen? Because you put a natural food, a whole food on the counter, and it's starting to rot in a few days. Even home baked sourdough with no preservatives starts to grow mold in a couple days. So I think in the convenience world we live in, we reach for these things, and yet we're fundamentally going backwards instead of going forwards. And do you believe that you can get protein, enough protein from whole foods, or do we have to
Yeah,
grab something in a package?
I think it's possible to do whole food based for all three things, for the probiotics, for the protein, for the fiber. I don't think you have to. I think there's actually, whey protein, for example, is a good example of something that is can be ultra processed, but you can also get whey protein that is not ultra processed. That is a great convenient source of protein. So I don't think that you need to necessarily kind of have a farm in your backyard. I mean, I know it's wonderful to think about. And we follow these accounts where they're like, cooking things from scratch, and that's all great. But in the practical world, I don't think that we need to be completely from scratch. But I do think that veering away from that 70+% of your food being ultra processed, that is something that I think is quite scary. And I mean, I know, and the teens and the young people in our lives, like they are eating this kind of food, and it's when they're in their 40s and 50s and 60s, they're going to see the effects of cumulative damage of these foods have. And it's really scary because when we were kids, the amount of ultra processed foods was in the 30 or 40% range. And so there's a lot more in the grocery stores and the environment and available today that we have to be aware of. And so maybe switching, one meal from an ultra processed food. So instead of going through, this is an example I'll give for that my kids that I give to my kids. I was saying instead of one meal that you do with your friends through the drive-through, maybe you do that at home. And anything you cook at home, especially if you're using basic ingredients, is going to be better for you than to get it from a fast food restaurant or a drive-through. And same thing with desserts. Desserts can be chocolate. You can have ice cream. You can have desserts, but it doesn't. you want to get the non-ultra processed types whenever you can. So I don't think it's an all or nothing thing where, now you have to grow everything in your own kitchen. You have to ferment foods at your home. But I do think that we can go away from this insane amount of ultra processed foods that we're having to something a little bit better. I don't know about you, but sometimes when we go on vacation and you're actually eating meals with each other 3 times a day, you are feeling better. Your stress levels are better, your motivation, because where you live in a world that's so fast paced, it's so cortisol heavy, and often our convenience foods are actually worsening that condition more than it's helping it.
What we're doing with all the ultra processed foods, 70% of it's an astounding statistic about teens today. The reality is that this is a generational problem, right? If most average American teens are doing this, well, then that's what they're going to feed their children, and that's going to feed. And where did our teens learn it? Well, some of them learn it on their own, but across middle America, it's just the way people eat. So it becomes really an urgent problem in my mind of how do you break this down? But you've been very clear today about what to eat, the timing of eating, some of the traps, but I want to cover 2 things. I want to cover, is there a place for supplements in our lives, or should we because I'm asked all the time, what's your supplement stack? And how do we know if we need these? Are there lab tests that you as a clinician say you need these baseline just to see where the gaps are?
Okay, so you and I both probably are somewhat similar in the sense that we're taking supplements. I think now, I think the number is 88% of Americans take supplements. And I think women in our age group probably it's like 100%. Like people 40 and above are taking supplements. And so it's not when I was in medical school, there's this big scare in residency too, like, don't take supplements. They're so scary. Like they're bad for you. They can damage your liver. They can do these things. And yes, in the setting of taking too many or taking the wrong ones, you can definitely do damage. So it's not something that more is not always better. But there are some, especially for women, that have good data behind them. And so the one that I talk about in the book, because I don't want to say that you need to take every single supplement in the world, but I think there's great data that women should get their vitamin D levels checked, for example. That's number one. There's 3 of them. Number one, vitamin D. And you can titrate that to your levels based on your lab testing. And number 2 is magnesium. Magnesium has been shown in women to help with cognitive aging, and diets with 550 milligrams of magnesium are better than the traditional diet or the 350 milligrams of magnesium. So you can do a combination of food and supplementation for that one. And magnesium glycinate is a wonderful one for women in perimenopause because of its natural anxiety and sleep-inducing effects. And calms anxiety, helps you relax before bed. It can be a really great one. There's all different kinds of magnesium, but the glycinate and the threonate are ones that I think that women really benefit from. And the third one is omega-3 fatty acids. So omega-3 fatty acids have great data because they're also kind of like ibuprofen for our body. They act very anti-inflammatory compounds, but they also help our brain as we age. So all of the things that we're really wanting to support in our as we get older is something that omega-3s can support. And so omega-3s, vitamin D, and magnesium are 3 that have the most data behind them. Coming up close behind these 3, that is a runner up, is creatine. Creatine is something that I've incorporated over the last 2 years, maybe, and really just regularly over the last year, because it has great data behind not only the muscle benefits, so it can help you support muscle growth, but it can also support brain health. And so that is something. The problem with creatine is that although it's a very old supplement, the studies are just coming out now about so like the amount of studies that we still have on vitamin D, omega-3s, and magnesium are countless at this point, population level, hundreds of thousands of people. Creatine, we're just getting there. And so that is another one that I really like for women. So those are the 3 plus a bonus that I recommend.
Do you have any experience or opinion on the difference between creatine monohydrate, which is what the literature has been developed on, and creatine hydrochloride?
I think it's still kind of up for debate about which is the best type of creatine. You're right. Like most of the studies are done on the monohydrate. I think the HCL, the recent one on people who are sleep deprived and taking creatine, I think that was creatine HCL. So there is good benefit for both, but I do think that the bulk of the data is on monohydrate. Not that we need to only do the one that's like old and study, but that's the one that has the most data behind it. I do think HCL is a good one too. I think I have both at home that I take.
I switched to HCL recently, and it's not that I won't go back. It's because I found that the monohydrate bloated my stomach, and it was uncomfortable. And so maybe that has to do with I didn't mix it well enough.
Yeah, no, but that's a big complaint with creatine, as you know, that's kind of the biggest complaint that people have is, you want to start slowly and you want to drink it with a lot of water, have it with a lot of water because of the potential bloating. And HCL does seem to have less of that effect. So that's a good point.
So we have been talking for the last little bit about your brand new book, Hormone Havoc, which comes out the very day we release this podcast. Yes. And you know what? Part of this, don't let me put any words in your mouth, but part of this has to be motivated by being a midlife woman yourself with teenagers and noticing what life is handing you. How do you feel about this time in life, though, Amy?
This is why I wanted to write this book, because I think a long time ago, I thought of aging as this terrible thing. Like I thought 50. Oh my God. I would never want to be 50,
before I was
right?
50, right.
Yeah. Like, when you're, especially I think things have changed a lot as we've gotten through those years. And one of the things I was noticing is I was starting to change what I ate and how I handled my gut health, my brain health, as I started to think more clearly. And I started to slow down a little bit. So I wasn't always in that cortisol heavy state. And when you do that, when you start eating, when you start sleeping, when you start not putting yourself in an adrenaline, cortisol state all the time, you start to have ideas. You start to do better in your life. You start to notice the people who are supporting you and the people who are like leeches or like negative energy. And you start to open up areas of your life that you never knew. And so I call it like finding gifts. Like most women I've seen that really start to take control of their health and mind, they start to find gifts later in life that they never knew they had. And they start pursuing things and doing things differently, starting new relationships, new jobs, new lives at an age where a lot of the society is telling us we're way too old to be doing that. And so I was seeing that in myself, and I was seeing that in all these amazing women around me. And I thought to myself, that's really like, we need to get this word out there that the best years of your life may be ahead of you, but that the best work that you've ever done is maybe ahead of you. And there's some gifts that you still have that you haven't discovered yet. And so would never go back to my 20s. Like I was not someone, that's not where I want to be again. So I'm very, very happy. Of course, there's trials and tribulations. For me, I'm in perimenopause. And so there's definitely trials and tribulations of being a woman in perimenopause and having teenagers and, working and all the things. But I would not want to go back in time for sure. I'm very much more happy and living my life the way I really want to at this age than I was back then.
Yeah. So Dr. Amy Shah, your new book, Hormone Havoc. Thank you so much, my friend, for coming. Bye, Amy.
Yes. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Thank you.